Growing up in the United States, I was often presented images in the media of school shootings and drive-by shootings, and that was very scary to me. But nothing is more terrifying than the idea of being in a public space and having some lunatic murder you by blowing himself up. This image is enough to stop most tourists from visiting some of my favorite cities, like Istanbul, Turkey. So in today's episode of Kult America, I'd like to present to you some of the locations where these types of terrorist attacks happen, to see what relevance they have on those locations on a daily basis. When you first arrive to the magical city of Istanbul, you are in the center of the world in a huge airport with many people from different cultures and places. It's exciting and it's fascinating. But as you depart Terminal 2, the first thing that I think any tourist would notice is a plaque commemorating the attacks which took place there in 2016. Essentially, armed terrorists with automatic weapons and explosive belts staged a simultaneous attack at the international terminal. 45 people were murdered in the attack, in addition to the 3 attackers. So arriving in Istanbul alone sets a very ominous tone for the paranoia you might already have from media images that you've seen. There's a plaque commemorating the fact that an attack happened, and to support that claim, you see many armed police officers with also, by the way, automatic weapons, who look like they're ready to defend the airport with military-style tactics. And there is no other word for it. That is simply terrifying. Once you've checked into your hotel and you're ready to go sightseeing, most tourists head to the area of the Blue Mosque. And I absolutely recommend that they do, because it is a massive, imposing, and beautiful piece of architecture. And in January 2016, 13 tourists were murdered when doing just that. While visiting a very prominent landmark, a suicide bomber approached them and ignited. It's pretty concerning to imagine what it would look like if a bomb went off in this place. And that is precisely what happened next to the monument behind me, killing a group of tourists. I really want to put a little bit of emphasis. Recently, I filmed a Q&A very close to this exact location, and we spent over 2 hours there with my wife. People were friendly, I felt very secure, and it was safe. These attacks are random and meant to instill the kind of terror that I am speaking of right now. So it's a strange thing, because on one hand, you can visit there and actually be statistically safe. On the other hand, if you let fear stop you from visiting the place, then indeed the terrorists have accomplished their goal. Terrorism is not a new story for the city of Istanbul. In Taksim Square, during a political demonstration in 1977, a gunman positioned atop adjacent buildings started to fire upon the crowd. Police dispersed people by spraying them with fire hose. All the same, the amount of casualties varies between 34 and 42 people. We don't have an exact statistic on that, and about 200 additional people were injured. So, as they tell you when you go on tourist trips not to visit places where political demonstrations are happening, I think that this case of history proves that to be solid advice. So when you reach the end of Istanbul's shopping district and do your shoe shopping, as I did, you reach this quite impressive square draped in Turkish flags. And this place is overwhelming for me in terms of its terrorist attack history, because the style of attack which once happened here was quite close to what we have a big issue with in the United States, and that's mass shooting. It's a little bit hard to imagine right now as I sit here with people freely walking around, taking selfies, shopping, enjoying themselves, that at one moment in history, people were just shot down like dogs in this place. And that's scary to me, because it's so easy to do. And if it happened once before, the truth is that lightning, you can't strike the tallest structure twice. Another attack that really disturbs me happened in Istanbul's main shopping district. And this is crazy because when you walk up and down the main shopping street, you really see happy people, you see couples, you see tourists eating ice cream with that crazy traditional way that Turkish people serve tourists ice cream, and it's really a happy, nice place. But beyond that, you can't help but notice the strong police presence there, and it's for a very good reason. In 2016, a suicide bombing took place in front of the district governor's office. Although the bombing took place at a time when the avenue was relatively quiet, the attack cost at least 5 deaths, including that of the perpetrator. 36 additional people were injured, including 12 foreigners.
That store alarm is giving a kind of crazy ambiance because I am standing in a place where the suicide bombing took place. It was kind of completely a random location in a day that it wasn't too crowded, but all the same.
I kind of hate to admit it, but visiting this street was one of the places, in addition to the airport anyways, that kind of did spook me a little bit. In the area of the Blue Mosque, there's a lot of space, and you really could feel that getting hurt in a terrorist attack or killed in a terrorist attack would be very random. In this shopping district, there are many people in a relatively narrow street, so you could easily imagine that it would be an ideal place for a suicide bomber to have a very profound and noticeable mission. This is the only place where I indeed sped up my pace of walking a little bit and didn't want to spend too much time. I just want to emphasize that I did not visit these sites to make any strong political statement or claim any stance. Rather the contrary, I made it to pose a question to you, the viewer. Would you visit these places? And if not, have the terrorists won?